right, good morning, Hive. Today we're going to actually leave chapter 8. We're not going to go into mixed numbers because we need to go into adding fractions using models. We will come back to mixed numbers, but we need to know better how to add fractions before we can understand mixed numbers. Mixed numbers are whole and apart, and so we need to know how to put numbers together with fractions first. So we're going into chapter 9, lesson 1. This lesson is all about using models. So if you want to pull out your fraction tiles that I have assigned to you in your math book, when you are doing this, that is great. I just want to give you a little background and show you how I would do it without models because I know a lot of you won't. So before we start, the most important thing is that you actually understand the vocabulary of unit fraction. What is a unit fraction? And I don't think your book does a very good job of this, but they're going to ask you to use it. So you need to understand that a unit fraction is really just any fraction that has 1 as its numerator. So for example, 1/5 is a unit fraction because it has the 1 on top. Okay, 1/8, that is also a unit fraction. Why? Because it has a 1 on top. The numerator is 1. It's just 1 out of 8 pieces. As well, 1/12 is a unit fraction. We just call it a unit fraction because there's just 1 unit. So 1/12 is a unit fraction. Any fraction that has a 1 as the numerator is considered a unit fraction. 3/5 is not. This is not a unit fraction because it has 3 out of 5 parts. 2/8, not a unit fraction because it has 2 out of 8 parts. 4/12 is not a unit fraction because it has 4 out of 12 parts. You are going to find that in the book, and we'll do some samples, that in the book it's going to ask you to take something like 4/12 and break it down, decompose it into a sum of unit fractions. And then we will kind of talk about how to do that. Okay, but you know that 4/12 is not because 1/12 is a unit fraction, right? So if I had to do 4/12 decomposed into unit fractions, there would be 4 of them. You would say 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 makes that 4/12. But we will practice with that, okay? All right, so here we go. So before we can add 2 fractions, you must understand, as I just said, that every fraction is a sum of unit fractions. So here I have drawn fourths, a tape diagram in fourths. I've drawn a tape diagram in sixths, 6 out of 6 parts, and I've drawn a tape diagram in thirds. All right, so I'm just going to give you some sample problems here now. Let's say I have 3/4. I have a candy bar and I ate 3/4. Now, your math book will say to you, they'll give you this beautiful picture of 3/4 model, and they'll say, can you write this fraction as a sum? And when you hear the word sum, you know that sum always means to add. So can you add this up as a sum of unit fractions? Well, a unit fraction has a 1 on top, and so I see 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. It's almost like you pull apart each one of those little tiles to see what's left. Do I count this one? No, because I'm not using it. I'm only using 1, 2, 3. I didn't eat this one. I only have 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. So my problem here would be, trying to see both, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Now here you can see that when we add fractions, when we're adding fractions, what did I do? I added 1 plus 1 plus 1 made 3. Did I add the denominators? Did I add the bottoms together? Did the bottom become 12? No, because the total number of pieces in this candy bar did not change. I did not suddenly develop 12 pieces of candy bar. There's still 4 total pieces. I ate 3. Okay, so we add across the top, the totals, the numerators, those add together, but the denominators do not. Okay, so when you're adding fractions, you add the numerators. You do not add the denominators because they are the same in these problems. Okay, let's check the next one. Okay, in this problem, my pizza came from Domino's, and they had our pizza cut into 6 pieces. It was great, and 5 of us were here. We each had 1 piece. 5 people came, and every one of them had one single piece of pizza. Or I could have said, Stella had 2. I'll say Garrett had 1, Sam had 1, I had 1. The 5th person never showed up. Okay? So altogether we ate 5 pieces. Can you write that as a sum of a unit fraction, sum of unit fractions? So remember, anytime it says sum, you know that means add. Unit means 1. So I'm going to write 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. And when they ask you to draw a model today, you can either write it out like this. I would do this. I would just write it out as the problem. 3, 1/4, 6 piece, and 1/6 equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 5 out of 6 eaten. Okay, so when they ask you to write something as a sum of unit fractions, that's how you're going to do it. All right, and the last problem I'm going to model for you. All right, this one here, this was great. So there were 3 game pieces, and the 3 of us were playing, and so I was this Dungeons and Dragons character, Garrett took the other one, and Stella took the 3rd one. We used all 3 of the Dungeons and Dragons characters that we were playing with. If I could write that, and now that means we used the whole thing, all 3 out of 3. I can still write that as a sum of unit fractions. 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 3 out of 3, or as you know, I would call it the magic 1. We used 1 whole, but it's still a sum of unit fractions. Okay? Now, when you have a problem like this, they may even ask you, a lot of times in word problems, they might say, okay, you have 5/6. Is there another way you could decompose it besides all these unit fractions? They might say, oh, could you do 2/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6? They may ask you to come up with lots of different ways to decompose outside of unit fractions. And so we'll get to some of that too, okay? So that's how to decompose a sum of unit fractions. So today, they will be asking you to do that. They will also, today and tomorrow, in both lessons, because today is models, they're going to be asking you to just add fractions with like denominators. So today they may say, you have 2/6 plus 3/6. And they're not going to let you just add these together. They're going to say, draw it with a model. Model it for us. And so right away, what did I tell you? Do we add the denominators? No. So the 6 just comes straight over. He stays. And we know that we do 2 plus 3. So for you guys, a lot of you are going to be like, that's so fast and that's so easy. But they want you to draw models today. Today's lesson is all about using models, drawing it, showing your thinking, doing something else. So you either need to draw a 6, draw a tape diagram, cut it into 6. You can do a number line and just shade in parts. Or you can do the unit fractions like I showed you, which is 1/6 plus 1/6. That's the first fraction. Plus, now, and are they different fractions? No, they're all still on the same piece. 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. This again brings another model showing that I had 2/6 and 3/6 all coming together. This is almost like drawing your own model. If I drew bars around it, you would just have an empty piece showing 5/6, right? So you can do this as a model if you like. I know a lot of you aren't comfortable drawing the lines or the tape. The only one here that I think they might do for you that is different is when they do give you something like 5/6 and they ask you, they say, oh, well, here's one way to draw it. Is there another way not using unit fractions? And so here they did 2 plus 3. Is there another way that you can think to make 5 besides 2 plus 3? And they'll do this with you in story problems a lot. And so I think about it and I think, oh, well, I've been playing a lot of dice games, and still then I've been playing a lot of ways to make numbers like high roll, low roll. And so I would think, oh, well, I think instead of 2 and 3, I could do 4 and 1. So I might say, oh, yeah, well, I could do 4/6 plus 1/6, the unit fraction, if they asked me for a different option, okay? And then I could draw that. I wouldn't do it this way, but I would draw my model. I'm going to give you a 6th model here. Sorry, it's hard to draw and hold my camera because I don't have a professional camera person. Okay, so I'd go like this. I would cut it in half, and then I'd go 1, 2, 1, 2. So now I have it in 6th, and I would go like this, and I would draw underneath it. I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would go, oh, and then I would go 1. Like that. So I would go 1, 2, 3, 4/6, and 1. Just make, or I can just actually write that as the 5. Okay? So you can kind of see that you're doing 4 plus 1 out of the 6. So you're really still seeing that there are 6, but you're only getting 5 of them. Okay, so let's do another adding, just a straight adding fractions. Let's go 5/12 plus 4/12. All right, so are the denominators the same? Yes. So am I adding them? No. 12 just floats right on over. The only thing I have to add is the top. So as a rule, adding fractions is like the easiest thing on the planet. So is subtracting fractions, okay? They are the easiest things ever. You just need to remember that when you decompose them, you can decompose them. When they ask you to decompose them into unit fractions, they need to be decomposed until there is a what on top? That's right, a 1. Okay, so have some fun with it today. Please make sure that if it asks you to use models, pull out those fraction tiles. And tomorrow, Thursday, when you have this lesson and we are in Zoom, after you watch this video, we're gonna actually make our own tiles. I'm gonna try to have you do that. So bring paper with you, okay?